what is the future.
All right, Professor Gulia.
Thank you very much. I think a number of issues were raised, and it's all largely around the issue of trust of the Commission. And there are a number of things. For me, I don't want to lament on what has happened in the past, although what has happened in the past should be able to inform us in what we will do in the future. Yeah. But I want to look at the issues, and I think what can earn us trust as a commission is for us to undertake our duties as per the law. And this is exactly what we ourselves to immediately after the elections. And for all the by-elections that we have held since 2017, it has been the most transparent by-elections that we were conducting, because we have been engaging both the contestants as well as other stakeholders throughout the process. And I think this is something perhaps we as a commission will have to build on in order to ensure that in the next election we have a lot more participatory discussions on the issues that we are undertaking. But as I mentioned earlier, yeah, the issue of funding is crucial, because elections, it's an electoral cycle. It's not a one-off activity. You need to prepare for the next election immediately you finish an election. Of course, you go through a post-election evaluation. Thereafter, you look at, based on the evaluation, what legislative amendments that needs to be brought in, what procedural changes that needs to occur. And this is what we have been engaged in since 2017. And it's as a result of these discussions, we have had engagements with the relevant committees of the two houses, and not just the CIOC chaired by Honorable Kioni. We've had discussions, lots of discussions with the JLAG chaired by Honorable Cheptumo. We have had lots of discussions with the Senate relevant committees as well. And we have been telling them what the issues are, and we have been giving them our ideas on what we think need to be done in order to improve or to avoid some of those challenges. And this has been translated into some of these new either amendments to existing laws or creation of new bills like the referendum bill, which is coming up for discussion. And so as a commission, we are undertaking what we are expected to be doing after an election before the next election, which means relooking at the legal issues, and again, looking at operational matters in terms of our manuals and our operations. And this, we are on course. Now, we need funding. A number of activities we were unable to undertake because we don't have the necessary funding. And so this is where we appeal to stakeholders. If you want to truly make IEBC independent, then we must be in a position to independently execute our activities, our agenda. And if each time we have a work plan, but we cannot implement because we do not have certain funding, then it makes our preparations for the next election haphazard. And when you are disbursed with money at the 11th hour, you know, that is when we run into issues about challenges of misuse of resources. Why can't these resources be availed in installments as we build up to the next election? I think that is something we need to do. The other thing the Commission has started in 2017, when we actually came to office, is to decentralize the Commission. And that is when we created what we are calling county election management offices. As a Commission, we think we need to build on this so that in future, at some stage, at later stage, if as a country we decide to have local elections and national elections, we can even have local elections being conducted at the county levels by the county electoral bodies. We can even in future decide to delink the national elections from local elections and have separate entities undertaken. And so we are setting that foundation now, and we decided to devolve the Commission, and we need stakeholders to support us in strengthening the devolution that we have done for the Commission, so that certain decisions are made at the county level, and those people take responsibility for it. Since 2017 elections, or since we came to office, we have also ensured that there is free media access to the election and to elections. And this is to ensure that at least any issues are reported on. And in the last by-elections that we have conducted, we have had access, free media access to the polling stations in all the elections that we have been conducting. And the other thing is we are having 6 elections in one day, and we find that it takes a huge toll on our staff at the polling stations, and having 6 ballot papers for different elective positions. Some of them are already there, like MCAs wanting their demanding their results. Others are MPs demanding their results. So it puts a lot of pressure on the staff during the election period. Is it possible that we have national elections and we have county-based elections? These are something that can improve the efficiency of the way we manage the elections.
The elections. All right. Let's bring in Elizabeth Kim Kung on this also.
Political parties. This has also a huge impact on our electoral systems. If we can also democratize our political parties so that at least we have the major stakeholders themselves, very democratic, I think it will help even the electoral processes.
Okay. Elizabeth Kim Kung, she's the Women League Chair, KANU. Just kindly delve into this discussion as well. And there's a question here from Donex Juma, who's saying, kindly inquire from the panel what proposal they think need to be affected in terms of the commissioners and the secretariat mandates to streamline and make the commission efficient in management of elections. Elizabeth. Just kindly unmute your mic first.
Sorry, Trevor. Sorry, just can you pose the question back to me?
Yes, there's a question from Donex Juma, who's wondering what proposals the panel thinks needs to be effected in terms of the commissioners and the secretariat mandates to streamline and make the commission efficient in management of elections.
Thank you very much, panelists. And Trevor, I'm sorry I was a bit late in joining. I had another meeting. I think IEBC has to be reconstituted. The current composition, when you look at it, and on section 5, I think, where it says that you have the bishop, somebody from the Supreme Council of Muslims, somebody from the Hindu Council. I think that composition has to be changed so that it is a representation of the people of this country, Kenya. We should involve, we should have a woman on that, which I think, or maybe use the 2/3 according to the constitution, gender, so there's a balance out. I think we should have more professionals on that panel of recruitment, because that's where the problem starts. When you have a recruitment panel that is almost compromised, as far as I can see, then you sort of pick people or agree to pick people who may not be as fair as what we think. So beginning from that, we have to change the composition of IEBC. IEBC should actually, sorry?
There was a whole conversation about when the Honorable Jeremiah Kioni brought it up and said it's not even about the people themselves, because even if you are given the mandate and then it was all factors held constant, there would still be a lot of questions and mistrust.
I don't think so, Trevor. I really don't think so. I feel that, when we say that every election you find people saying that the IEBC was compromised or part of the IEBC was compromised, why is that a common phrase that we hear? Why do people feel that some people can be compromised? Now, I believe people are compromised from the beginning. When I give you a job, you would actually do me a favor. Yeah, so I think it boils down from that. Now, if you got independent people, qualified people who actually went and passed an interview, the same way people go for job interviews, I don't think you'd be easily compromised. You'd be there to work, yeah? and you know that you have to deliver and you have a mandate to deliver. So I think the problem really starts from there, because people point fingers at the commissioners. Sometimes I do feel sorry for them, because I don't think all of them are in that category of being compromised, but it's a perception. Now, when you're 7 of you and you can't reach an agreement and you find one waking up and speaking their own language, then it says a lot. We saw that in the last election. We've seen that in the previous elections. There's always one commissioner who tends to think that something is not right. So they're not even working as a team. Yeah. If they were working as a team, we would have one result and everybody would be saying the same thing. But you'd not have one person doubting the other. Yeah. So I think it starts from there. The reduction, I think, when they said they want to reduce the commissioners from 7 to 5, I think we should also have less people. Why do we have so many commissioners? Yeah, you know, I look at it and say sometimes when you have fewer people, even on a board, they achieve a better result. When you have so many people, then you end up having divided decisions. Does IEBC educate people? Are they strengthening the voters, the candidates, the political parties? I don't think so. Yeah. So I'm saying all these things are hanging and there's this vacuum that comes in and everything goes haywire. So, I mean, I would just look at it like composition matters. We have to start from there. Credible people, make people know that you're taking an oath not to bring problems in the country to the citizens, but to actually chart the way forward. We should be having peaceful elections. Other countries do. Why can't we? We've come a long way. Most of us, I think Kenya has got a huge population of highly educated people. Yeah. Okay. So I look at it and say, it's not even the education bit. You turn around and tell people, oh, probably they're behaving this way. But we are, you know, and we are so exposed. So why can't we get it right? Why is it so difficult?
Okay. Let's bring in Honorable Kioni on this. Kioni, is that a possible solution, reconstitution of the commissioners and even reducing the numbers? Unmute your mic first. There.
The draft proposal that is before Senate retains a number of 7 commissioners. The one that is perhaps if the one that came from my committee that is going through second reading talks of 5 commissioners, reducing them from the current number that we have. These are still, you can see there will be always proposals on how we can go about it. I believe that a smaller commission is better than a large one, for the reason that the issue of having your own on board is also another way of compromising the independence of this commission. You start feeling like since you have a person there, then things will go the right way. If you don't have your own person, they must be doing the wrong thing. These are some of the fundamental issues that we must address. So you need to make it as small as possible so that you don't want to feel like you need a person from your community. We look at the integrity of these individuals as opposed to where they come from. But secondly, also, I think within Parliament, there is another issue that I need to bring out that I think we may miss.
Go ahead, Honorable Kioni. All right, Honorable Kioni, we seem to be having a bit of a technical glitch there.
To a different of Parliament. But you can hear me now? You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying that with I would say the constitutional commissions need to report to a separate committee of Parliament. When they report to the departmental committee of Parliament, they actually get compromised because they are made to report through the ministry, the parent ministry, which is what we were trying to run away from when we talked about independent commissions. That is one of the things that is ailing our IEBC, and we need to address it quickly. We have written to the Speaker to do the same, and we have also made proposals to amend the relevant laws and regulations to see whether that can be accepted as a way of managing our independent commissions.
All right. Let's bring in Margaret Ndani as well. She's the Executive Director, ANC. Margaret, you've been hearing this conversation all through, and now the only question we're still grappling with is how do we restore trust in the IEBC? What are your recommendations, Margaret? Just unmute your microphone first.
Thank you. Yeah. I have had two questions which have not been answered. One was to Mheshimiwa Kioni.
Yes.
What is Parliament doing in making sure that we get the other commissioners to make it 5, as he puts it, because the elections are just round the corner.
Okay.
2, to gain the trust of the citizens, I believe IEBC should start educating the citizens. They should have started yesterday. You need to start educating the citizens right from the grassroots. Now that you have got regional offices, this is the work of the regional offices now. Your officers on the ground should be talking to the citizens, telling them this is how IEBC operates, ensuring the citizens that they have a right to ask questions, and their questions must be answered. We need to see IEBC on the ground. People don't see them. They only see them towards election, and that is the time people are being intimidated, because by that time IEBC saw it's a big animal, okay? So the citizens don't even get close to them to ask them any questions. They are put off. So this is the right time to start educating the citizens, to reassure them that their voice is heard or it will be heard. Otherwise, we can't have trust in them. You know, after the bungled elections of 2017, when the Supreme Court ruled, what has happened after that? Nothing is happening. What changes are they doing? We are not seeing anything. Of course, they are talking about the finances. We want to appreciate that yes, Treasury has not given them the money that they require, but nevertheless, on the ground, there are small things that their people can start doing for us to start having trust in them. That's my take.
Okay. Let's bring in Peter Kahara, Director of Elections at Jubilee, before Honorable Kioni and Gulia answer the questions that have been raised there. Peter, I don't know whether you're still with us. We can see you, but we don't have your video feed. Peter from Jubilee Party. If you're with us, you can just make this conversation and talk about what you think are the ways that we can restore trust in the IEBC. Peter? Okay, I seem to think Peter may not be there. Michael, you wanted to contribute? Yes, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Interesting conversation, but I wanted to perhaps not necessarily redirect, but look at the conversation we are having, particularly on the IEBC, and to pick up from perhaps where Ms. Ndani has left it. And I think the way I look at it, the bigger question is not the citizens. The citizens have a very simple ask of the IEBC in any democracy, is that the IEBC as an electoral management body will secure the voice and the decisions of the voters. The only thing the citizens expect is that they come out, they vote, and their wish and decisions is reflected in the results. As long as any electoral management body cannot guarantee that, it's illegitimate, it is irrelevant, and it undermines the democratic tradition of any society. And I think so that's the only thing as citizens we should ask of IEBC. But more importantly, to the substance of the conversation, IEBC is a product of the dysfunctionality, whether created, imagined, or real, that we see within IEBC is a product of two things. One is meritocracy in how people get into IEBC, which has implications both in terms of how politicians, political interests, etc., are negotiated during recruitment. Our Constitution of Kenya 2010 envisaged a very clear, transparent, accountable process of nominating and appointing people to the commission. We cannot stand in good faith and say that we have seen that materialize in the caliber, both in terms of ethical considerations, integrity of the people who have ended up managing the elections of this country. The political compromises that result in who is being appointed, whether it is the chair or commissioners, and those machinations means also those people are compromised at birth. Inability to act on issues of public interest, in addition to act against political party interests. And I would remind you to something very basic. IEBC can talk about laws, we can talk about resources, but the social agency, the human beings, men and women who manage our electoral system, have already more than 90% of what they need to deliver credible elections and secure our democratic promise. They haven't delivered on that. In 2017 elections, there was a lot of a huge public campaign around the red card campaign. I'll give you a practical example where civil society actors, faith communities joined together and say, let us breathe life to the chapter 6 of the Constitution. Spoke and wrote to political parties, asked them not to nominate persons of funny characters, integrity challenges, wrote the same to IEBC, wrote to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which to its credit for the first time actually not only increased the number of the list from the red card 20, but increased it to I think 206 or 106. And asked the IEBC to not authorize these people to run. The IEBC, for one reason or another, decided it's not within their mandate. It has failed at every opportunity, even with low-hanging fruits, to actually protect the integrity of elections, to protect the kind of people and characters who show up every year for Kenyans to elect. Okay. Secondly, I think having said that, the dysfunctionality, the inability of IEBC is also a reflection of our political culture, lack of accountability, and impunity in this country. So this Mgala Muwe na Kiumpe, IEBC is definitely a problematic institution. But we have to look at that, the nature of IEBC, its failures, its successes, within the context of also our political culture. Are we people, are we political parties, political actors, even within our political parties, who value the very standards that we hold IEBC to? Okay. We saw the mess, and I think it's Honorable Jeremiah Kioni and I think Professor Abdi has pointed out. If you look at the nominations within political parties, and I know most of the time we talk about financial resources as a precursor to running better elections. I think the nominations within the two major political formations in 2017 debunked that myth completely. Financial resources available, nationwide coverage, etc. But we saw what happened in those nominations in a way that actually was a shame to the promise of our democratic elections. So how do we challenge ourselves as a country, as a people, to ensure that the standards we hold IEBC to are also the standards we hold ourselves to within political parties and aspire to the same? Because the dysfunctionality within political parties may also have an impact on the same dysfunctionality at the electoral management bodies. Finally, if we talk about electoral justice, if IEBC is seen as a guarantor of electoral justice, that the voices of the people will find expression in the results that they announce, how can that electoral justice conversation be devolved, not just be confined, one, at the national level only, but also not only at the level of presidential elections, so that as political actors, as political parties, as institutions of accountability, we really aspire to see electoral justice within our political institutions, our commissions, our nation at large. So I think mine needs to challenge all of us as actors, that the challenges we see within IEBC, if IEBC came to manage our electoral processes within our own parties, would they have the same challenges, or would they perform better? So therefore, is the problem IEBC or a political culture that frowns upon integrity, transparency, and accountability?
All right. Honorable Kioni, there were some direct questions to you, which I'd like you to answer. Then I go to Honorable Karua to just get our reactions on this. There was a question to Honorable Kioni from Dani, who says that what is Parliament doing to get us out of this particular situation that we are in right now? Honorable Kioni.
Thank you. One is that I think as we talk about the elections, we also need to know that the boundaries issue is also on the card and coming on very quickly. Another issue that's likely to be very, very stormy. But what Parliament is doing is, I have mentioned that we have those acts of Parliament that are pending before final processing by Senate. And in those acts, we have suggested on how to constitute the panel or the panelist that is supposed to agree on the commissioners or suggest names for the commissioners. And interesting is that even agreeing on the panel on who is to sit to give names on the commission, it's another big issue. So the thing is not the personalities per se, but it is our mistrust among towards each other, this community against the other. And now we are also saying that there are parties that political parties are also saying they want to have a role to play in picking commissioners. So if a party does not pick their own commissioner, which commissioner are they going to believe in or trust when the elections come? So these are issues that the issue of I don't know how, but we have too much suspicion among ourselves. And of course, a little bit, not a little bit, but this is complicated by the IEBC when they're in office and perhaps they are not able to tell us things the way we expected them to do. But we have bills before that are likely to go to the president for signing that suggest on how do we fill in either 2 slots or 4 slots, depending on which bill passes through Parliament. And I think, let me say that I don't believe there's any other level of professionalism we have not tried with our IEBC since 1997. We have to look at how can we now learn to trust our institutions, because there is a mistrust of that institution of IEBC, mistrust of Parliament, mistrust of the judiciary, all these things. I think the problem lies somewhere else.
The problem lies somewhere else. All right, let's bring in Honorable Karua on this. And Honorable Karua, there was a proposal from Honorable Kim Kung saying that we should reconstitute the commissioners and even reduce the number of commissioners if possible. Would that be a possible solution?
I don't think it's a solution, although having a mean, leaner commission is quite attractive. I want to repeat something I said before. After IPPG in 1997, I was then in the Democratic Party with Jacob Haji here, and we nominated 2 commissioners out of, I don't know whether those days there were 22. And even with our 2 commissioners, we were still rigged by KANU. The same commission that rigged us out was able to hold very good elections in 2002, led by Kibuito. Not that they were perfect. KANU still tried to rig. I'm sorry, I have to say it from our perspective then, but there was an overwhelming support for the National Rainbow Coalition, and that's when we had a change of government. Why am I talking of 97 and 2002? To show you that the same commissioners we condemned in 97 gave us a good election in 2002. Just like Isaac Hassan, as an interim, a leader of an interim independent electoral commission, gave us a very good referendum in 2010, but he failed with his commissioner as a credible election in 2013. So it is not about changing commissioners. It may be something to do with also moral probity of some of the people, but it's more about our political and social culture, because the political parties, whoever arrives at the commission, will have clients who are trying to compromise them, right from the clerk at the polling station. And that's why I said we need to have a conversation to ask ourselves, how can we get out of this? And one of the ways is to have each person individually accountable. If you act contrary to the constitution or the law, you are prosecuted, and that's period. The commission, even when you report misdeeds by the presiding officers, their knee-jerk reaction is to tell you that there was nothing like that without investigation. If you report to the returning officer or presiding officer, they dismiss you offhand, which is a dereliction of duty. When you go to the Director of Public Prosecutions, these are not cases they want to touch. You will be left to private prosecution. We have to sit and agree, and I want to agree with Iowa that there are some few things we could tidy up in some legal reforms, but most of it is about us. If we look each other in the eye, talk, use our past to inform our present, we can be able to come out with a mechanism of how to hold each person accountable, not just IEBC, but even people from political parties, political party cronies who violate the rules. We also have to have a more participatory approach.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the IEBC genuinely take the suggestions agreed on by political parties? And we are many. It is not possible for the IEBC to sit with us individually. But what about at the level of CMD or the political parties liaison committee or whatever formula which also brings in civil society? Because I don't want political parties left on their own. Let us have involvement of other stakeholders because elections belong to all of us. And let's find a new pathway. I wouldn't even mind those current commissioners, once it is properly constituted, carrying on with the elections, so long as we have a new way of doing things, a participatory approach, and we have a mechanism of holding each other to account. And that applies to other institutions like the judiciary.
Yeah.
When Parliament, when Kioni says that people want to influence who gets nominated, they want to influence who gets to the panel, it's because most players have ulterior motive. You think if you have a commissioner, you can manipulate them. You can be able to manipulate things to your favor. At the end of the day, we have to remember that when we became independent, the elections in this country were run by a single person, Montgomery. And after Montgomery, it was Nyarango. One person can actually run elections if it's a participatory approach, and if we then have committees at the county level.
All right.
And the counting and announcements must be at that level. Forget this electronic transmission, which then the commission lets hang and stops. Forget their portals, where then they bring all the forms down and you cannot upload a single one. Let's find a mechanism that suits us.
All right. And I want to thank Honorable Senator Abshiro Alake, CMD chairperson, for joining us now. She was a bit held up, now she's with us. And Miss Lilian Mahiri Zaja is also with us, former vice chair IEBC. We'll get their views as well. And also Mule Musau, ELOG executive director, is also with us. We'll get their views. But Francis, before I cut you short, you were talking about the
from one electoral to the other. So for me, staggering is a way to go. Somebody mentioned about the fact that, you know, we've got a commission that has got competent people. I think it was Stephen, but that there's a black hand somewhere that interferes with the way the commission works. This is true. It's part of what I call the informal blockages towards having a credible commission. And it happens because of some of the reasons that Honorable Karua has been talking about, some of the ones that Honorable Kioni spoke about. So I think while on the side of the external actors like politicians, they need to manage their appetite for getting their hands into the commission and trying to determine how things are done. What we also need is a set of commissioners that can actually run things in a way that is, in a very objective sense, independent, because we can see that they're actually pushing back on these external forces, but also that doesn't have even the slightest indication to the members of the public that something might be amiss. And I think I would agree with one of the participants who said communication is part of the problem. The way you communicate during an electoral cycle, especially at critical points like when results are about to be announced, should be very different from the way you communicate about locusts, for instance. Those two things are very different. And I think it's time that the commission ramped up its political communication. The other thing, Trevor, that I had was just the fact that even though everything cannot be addressed by the law, there's these two things that we need to apply our minds to. One is that the commission needs to be truly open with election data, because my experience with these things has brought me to the level where I now believe we have sorted out many of the traditional problems we had with credible elections, but we are left with the small issue of results. The reason why I trust my bank with my money is anytime I know what my balance is. Now it's down to things like even getting an SMS on my phone whenever a withdrawal is made and so on. So if you shine light on the data, you will deal with a lot of the issues that we are still having around credibility. So the commission should never be in the kind of position that Honorable Karua spoke about, where they are holding back on information. That information must all be taken to court, errors and all, as soon as the election is over, yeah? So that whatever problems we have to deal with around data are settled in that manner. And if somebody was found culpable, they should be dealt with. But there's also something else that relates to the political parties that I want to put on the table. Some of the regulations were changed in ways that made it difficult for the commission to operate, because deadlines need to be sequenced in a particular manner. I can always go into the detail of this in a separate conversation, but there's a way that, again, when Parliament made changes to this close to the last elections, they constrained the operating space that the commission had. Then two last things. We need to learn from the elections we've been running and keep improving the process. There's nothing like perfection. There's always room for improvement. There's, of course, a tolerance limit for mistakes. So for me, the EMB, IEBC should not be tripping up on data processing at this point in time. Commissioner Gulier, we are human, we all make mistakes, but you've had over 2 years. That was a big PR fiasco for the data report to be submitted to the public, withdrawn for corrections, and to still come back with errors. There's something going on there about the quality of your quality processes. And then lastly, the communication bit, which is very important for bolstering public trust. Thank you.
Okay. Let's bring in Ms. Lilian Mahiri Zaja. She's the former vice chair for IEBC. And Ms. Mahiri, what we were talking about before you joined us was the biggest question of how to tackle the inefficiencies in the IEBC and restore public trust. And Emily Osiemo here, who's also joining us on live chat, is saying that, thank you, Honorable Martha Karua. Most concerns with IEBC are about integrity and accountability. Very few legal reforms are required. Honorable Mahiri Zaja, what is your take on this? How do we then restore the trust in IEBC? And you've been there before. Tell us the intricacies of the issues that are bedeviling the commission that we may not understand from the outside in.
Thank you, and my apologies for having run late from another engagement. I think a lot of things have come out, even the few that I've listened to. And, you know, the commission experiences a lot of pressure from all stakeholders. And when that kind of pressure is too much sometimes, you find the trust definitely goes down. But I think there's been very good suggestions from Honorable Karua about a participatory approach. This is what we tried out in 2012, 2013, before the general election, with the PPLC and the CMD and other, you know, civil society organizations that came in. But we realized that within the PPLC, it was a good platform for consultations, for passing information, but it turned out to be a war zone for all the political party players coming there and for the IEBC. And the mistakes the political parties were making, they were not bringing in people in leadership positions to come and attend the PPLC forums. So you'd find people come there, they are heckling at the IEBC, and they're not making any decisions, and they're not even talking about the policy issues they should be talking about. They are talking about other issues of allowances and hitting out at the commission on things which should really be sorted out administratively rather than the policy issues. You find that now even engaging becomes so difficult. So the question that we have lessons, a lot of lessons to learn from these past engagements should be at the front of the table now. As Honorable Karua says, that we should be able to look at each other in the eye and say, what is the problem here? Why this? We had brought in the PPLC within the law. And this is something we borrowed from Ghana and South Africa. And we praised them that it was working. We even went to South Africa and visited with the CMD, with political parties, and had a first-hand experience of how they were handling consultations within the political space. So you find this is still an area that we really need to work on as a society, all of us, and so that any commission that comes into place, they are able to have that space where they can really have that participatory approach. The other thing is about, integrity. Integrity, and it's driven by the faces and all the activities that the IEBC does. If you do not ensure that there's integrity in the processes, then even in the end result, there'll be a problem. But I think if I may talk about the Isaac Hassan team, we had a lot of pressure in trying to conduct a first election under the 2010 constitution, and we were taking in so much of IT. And remember, we are looking at IT as something that was facilitative. But I think IT was not trusted even by the people. And I say this because I happened to have gone to observe elections in Mexico in 2012. And the Mexican elections were basically done manually. But in 2012, they decided they were going to introduce electronic voting and to use IT in their processes. So what they did, they just displayed during the election day, they just displayed all those electronic gadgets they would use in their next election so as to start preparing people's minds. Because remember, elections are about perceptions. So they started preparing the electorate that come next time, we shall be having these gadgets when we are doing elections. We will no longer be writing manually all these, even their voters register then was manual. And I realized that because there is a lot of trust in the Electoral Commission, the people are able to accept, try out the gadgets, and really, Mexico is a country which has doubled the size of our electorate. And you find even on election day, they are able to announce results with only about less than 15% of the entire results in. So I think, again, when I look at how our processes were, IEBC was coming in with a bang in terms of all the reforms which had been proposed during the Kriegler committee. So all these things, if we are going to take in the lessons learned and look at each other and look at what actually needs to be done, we will be able to learn. I think the other thing Ayo said about staggering the terms of the commissioners, I would agree with this because this is a proposal that was there on the table, even up to Naivasha, and I believe Honorable Karua would recall this, but somehow those proposals for staggered terms were removed, and of course the commission serves that one term and leaves and has to leave. And it was on the basis that we will have a professional secretariat, so we don't need, even if we don't stagger the terms of the commissioners, we will have a professional secretariat that will conduct elections. So I think some of these things, we still need to go back, look at them, and try and iron out some of those little things that we need to do. The other things is about transparency on results. And you remember how we had challenges for 2013 during the results transmission. We only had about 44% transmission of the presidential results. The rest, it was a problem, which we acknowledged during our post-election evaluation, and we had to work on that. But still, even what happened in 2017 shows we still have a challenge in terms of managing data. And I would agree with Ayua that it's a fatal mistake for any commission to actually put data out there to the public with so much errors, take it back and still return it with errors. And on that particular issue, I would say the Isaac Hassan team prepared what we call the Green Book with the election data. And it was so meticulously done such that every commissioner who was supervising a specific area had to come out and verify, yes, these are the results with their officers before we published and presented them to Parliament. So I think as we go along, we need to really candidly say that all these things need to be reopened to unpackage everything and see where we need to reform and where we need to take a step back and say, okay, even if we did well on this particular aspect, like the BVR, we did well because we registered quite a good number of the electorate on the targets we had, but we need to improve it in terms of being transparent and being credible. Remember, even the register had a problem. So I would leave it there for now, but I would say, I would agree with the recommendations that we are thinking about now, because if we are to nurture democratic governance, we need to be looking at ways to improve the electoral process.
All right, let's bring in Professor Abdi Gulia on this. Professor, there seems to be a very big concern on how could you publish wrong results, take them down, and then publish them again with errors. What really happened there? Just unmute your microphone, please.
I think this we've released a press release which gives explanations on some of the issues that may have happened, and it accompanied the revised or rather the corrected version, and so it's there in the public domain. But as I mentioned earlier on, we did have lots of data, and the office that we entrusted with were overwhelmed by the counter-checking of each of the data that was available. And the same office actually coordinated the post-election evaluation, because some people said you had 3 years. Yes, we had 3 years, but the research division that does that had a number of other activities that they were engaged in one after the other. And most of them could not be done concurrently because of inadequate staff in that particular section. And generally at the headquarters, we have a number of inadequate staff in different directorates. And so these were transpositional errors. There were very few compared to the size of the data. And when we discovered it, we owned it up and pulled it down and corrected. And I'm not sure that what has been corrected still has errors. I'm not sure about that, because to the best of my knowledge, what is uploaded is the correct version of the data. But having said that, I think there are a number of issues that arose. Trevor, if you don't mind, I can make a comment on. There was the issue of what are we doing in terms of civic education? I think I mentioned earlier on that this is one of the core activities of the Commission, civic education, and telling people about elections. And as much as it is a core activity in the IEBC Act, we have not had any funding for this particular activity. And despite the fact that we did not have any funding for it, we have created what we are calling annual voter education week, so that one week in every year, we devote all our staff across the country in engaging different stakeholders, trying to educate them on what the Commission does and interact with the public and answer questions from the public. And this goes on at the headquarters as well as across the 47 counties. Now, this particular activity, if we had funding, we would have expanded it so that our interactions, day-to-day interactions with the public would have been enhanced much further. But there was something else raised about Chapter 6 and us clearing people with issues of integrity. I think it's good for the country to know that it's for the first time that it is us who actually asked for that inter-sectoral committee so as to discuss and to see how to handle these matters. Yes, we received a list of about 104 or 106, I can't remember. But against each name, what we were seeing is that somebody is being said he's been investigated for something like this. Now, as a commission, we cannot block somebody merely because he's been investigated. Because the same law that guides election tells us you can only block somebody from contesting if they have been convicted of an offense for about 6 months or beyond. Now, for merely being investigated, I think the commission would have been taken to courts left, right, center if we had to engage in that kind of, go with that kind of recommendations. So yes, if we want us to block people who are being investigated, then let us have a change in the law to give the commission that strength, that legal strength to undertake that kind of blockages. To the best of our knowledge, we scrutinized everything and we found that a number of the things that were on that list, people that were on that list, had we decided to block, we would have run to court and it would have been an egg on our face. And for that, I don't think as a commission, we would want to be in that kind of a situation. So we need to be very honest with ourselves. If somebody merely because they have been taken to court or they are undergoing investigation, they should not contest, then let's make it clear in the laws for us to execute. Now,
all right.
I think we had a number of, in terms of the quality of the elections that we have done, we have had so many petitions, especially after the presidential nullification, and everybody who had grievances against us went to the courts. We had nearly 300 petitions filed, but at the end of the day, we had less than 5 or I don't know, 6 or 7 of them that had succeeded. This is an indication that perhaps the commission was not, the elections that the commission presiding over was not that bad as people are painting it. And therefore, as a commission, for us, we know we did the best we could under the circumstances, and especially considering the fact that some of us came into the scene just about 6 months to the elections. What people don't know is that immediately after the elections and following that presidential nullification, we decided to take stock of what has happened and what the challenges were and whether our staff were involved in these challenges. And we, for a period of 1 week, we had disciplinary hearings for the first time in the history of the EMBs in this country. After the elections, we had disciplinary hearings for nearly 40, I think 44, 45 staff whom we had singled out for having done things outside the procedures of the commission. And we had various sanctions meted on them. And therefore, it is not that we are having business as usual. We took stock, we dealt with those staff that had perhaps done things wrong, and now they know anytime an election is done, if they don't behave as per the law, as per our procedures, that the commission will catch up with them and they will be able to be disciplined for that. And in terms of engagement, yes, we would like to engage as much as possible, but the avenue that is available to us at the moment is through the PPLC. And it has already been pointed out that, you know, once we have this, whenever we call these meetings, normally we don't get the heavyweights, particularly the chairs and the secretaries of some of these political parties. They normally serve as just representatives. And one other observation we have made is that the so-called bigger parties don't even sometimes show up. And so we have that difficulty. How do we engage our main stakeholders in this process? And this is the kind of representations that they are giving us. Now, going forward, I think one of the challenges we had in the last election was on the result transmission. And this is something which we are not addressing as a country. And the reason we had challenges because nearly a quarter of our polling stations lie outside a 3G internet coverage area. Now, if we don't correct this, even in 2022, the same challenge will recur. Now, what we did in 2017 was to try and address this by getting GSM technology, which is in itself, satellite transmissions, which is in itself extremely expensive. And yet we could not get enough money to cover the entire quarter of the police stations that are outside 3G network areas. And so as a country, we should now be thinking of how can we build base stations across the country to facilitate elections and also to facilitate other developments in the country. I think these are issues we need to be engaging on as we prepare to 2022, because the same challenge will recur, you know, in 2022.
And you've actually started that conversation well, Professor, because what I want us to do now, we have about 30 minutes to go. What reforms are needed to the IEBC to restore trust? That is the main conversation that we should have. And as Senator Abshiro is now with us, I don't know if she's still there. Senator Abshiro, if you can hear us, you should kick off this conversation. And also just tell us from your perspective, what can CMD then do to rectify the shortcomings of the PPLC that had actually been spoken about? But mostly let's focus on the reforms that are now needed to put IEBC back on the road, because elections are coming, referendum may be coming. We need to have trust in the IEBC. Senator.
Thank you very much, Trevor, and thank you very much, everybody. My apologies, I arrived late. I was held up totally in something that I could not get myself out of, but I had communicated. I hope the apology was passed. But thank you. I know that you guys have dealt with this very well, and that's why I was not even worried. Now, Trevor, I don't want to go back because I do not know how much has been discussed, and knowing that most of our experts and most of our people who have so much experience with the IEBC, but also the electoral processes, electoral bodies, and way back to the 90s and the electoral history that we are now seeing in this country. So I don't want to go back too much. But one thing I want to say as Center for Multi-Party Democracy is, first of all, thanking the political parties for keeping the fire burning. And I thank the IEBC, Dr. Professor Gulia, thank you for coming and for putting yourself out to account to us, and because that is what leadership is about. But I just want to say that the issue of mistrust of IEBC is not unique to it, even though it doesn't excuse it, because its stakes are really high. And that one of the things as Parliament, first of all, is that we needed a very robust electoral legislation. I know I've been reading the online comments and the chats where people are saying there's quite a lot of pieces of legislative amendments that are pending before Parliament, and they were really asking, when is that going to happen, and is it going to happen too close to the elections and therefore just mess us up? I want to assure that I know Mheshimiwa Kioni is also on this. I don't know if I can see him, but and what we can say is that we are pushing through Parliament as CMD, you know, a more holistic and comprehensive electoral legislation that details every single phase and stage activity, all the procedures to avoid risks or illegalities that first of all, we as parliamentarians can ensure that is mitigated. Because as you know, as parliamentarians, then we will start with what it is that we have control over, which is the legislation. And therefore, and as political parties, my challenge then would be, can we look at every single stage, every single procedure, every single you know, stage of the electoral process, especially the ones with the weakest link, and give us good proposals that we can push through in the next few weeks and days, so that we dispense of that particular issue. But then, of course, laws are one thing, legislation is one thing, and implementation, as Honorable Karua has said, you know, the integrity and all these things of the individual comes into play. Now, with that, and one of the things that actually I really liked about BBI at the time and was really encouraged by, is the fact that the issues of national ethos and the issues of Chapter 6 and all these things, and integrity and the corruption and All these things were things that this country is dealing with and all our institutions are dealing with. But for us as politicians and political actors and political parties, then the IEBC becomes our low-hanging fruit, where then we say, how do we then, A, put in place robust legal frameworks, B, design our electoral body in such a way that the design itself takes into account our peculiarities as Kenya. Let me just use a word that Safaricom once used, our peculiarities as Kenya. Exactly how does the design of our electoral bodies or the design of our institutions take into account that? But even when you take that factor into account, again, the independence of our institutions is at its lowest at the moment. And I think that has to do with the mistrust of our institutions, including Parliament. We need to look at these things. I don't have answers to them, but perhaps through good legislation and through us really auditing every single stage of the electoral process and seeing what power dynamics are there and how can we, as political actors, as political parties, as Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and as citizens, where can we start demanding that our institutions get the powers that they're supposed to get, especially our constitutional bodies, which ideally the power should have come from the fact that they're answerable to the Constitution and not to individuals. But that is not perfect either. So I think these are some of the things, and we were going to make sure that we're looking at these things and doing this. For now, be it Parliament, be it even our political parties, all these things seem to not be there at the moment. Yeah. Inadequacy of resources, as Professor has just said, oh, my team didn't have this and that on these kinds of things. But I like Honorable Martha's assertion that we should hold people personally responsible. But the problem with that is you hold me responsible and put me in trouble. But if I acted on behalf of somebody else that perhaps has the power, I may still get away with it. And so we need to really, really look at every step of the way. Where is the weak link? As I said, I don't have the answer, and this is what this dialogue is precisely about. And we'll collect all the ideas and ensure that then we start looking at, as the outcome of these dialogue forums, what it is can we quickly, from the legislative perspective and other areas, can we put in place.
All right, and those are the recommendations we want to make right now, real quick as we wind up. And Mule Musau, who is also joining us here, is the ED-ELOG. Mule, what are some of the reforms that you'd like to see? What do you think are some of the reforms that are needed? Just enumerate for me as we go through all the panelists to try and get their thoughts on the reforms needed. Mule?
Well, I'll be very brief because a lot has been shared by so many people. The first is that, as Iowa said, we need to implement the remainder of the Kriegler recommendations. And one critical recommendation which had been given by Kriegler was to secure the independence of the commission through a charge in the fund, in the consolidated fund. Give them their own funds. Because if Parliament continues to control the purse that drives IEBC, then you can see the kind of persuasions and the ability for them to be able to interfere in the processes of the commission. So I think the first thing is to deal with the issue of can we have all the recommendations put in? Can we have fidelity to the law, even as it is right now? And if you have any interventions in terms of any amendments to the law, can we have them done in a timely fashion so that we don't have to wait until the year of elections, then we start running around? The fact that we have a terrain where we have a fluid legislation or a fluid legal framework where we keep changing laws every now and then. We can suspend the Campaign Finance Act, for instance, at whim. We can't have a commission running in such a landscape and expect it to be very efficient. Now, internally, just quickly, issues of the commission have been mentioned. They need to be robust public engagement. We need to have very predictable processes from the commission when they are sharing information. The question about the errors of the data, for instance, is just a quality control issue, which the commission can be able to address. But they also need to show strong leadership, in my view, as far as the electoral reforms are concerned. We are discussing these issues. IEBC seems to be in abyss at somewhere. I mean, it should be the one taking the leadership in terms of what changes do you want to see in the election reforms. And then finally, just again as Ayo.
All right, we seem to have lost Mule there. Yeah, let's bring in Honorable Karua. What are the recommendations you're making in terms of reforms needed? Just enumerate for me as we wind up on this. Honorable Karua, you just unmute your microphone first.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
We have to make sure that the Electoral Commission uses funds in an accountable and efficient manner. If we equate independent commissions to use of money without accountability, then we are headed for hard times, because the courts will say they want their own fund away from Parliament, because Parliament does two things. It passes the budget, it allocates, and it oversights. If we take that away from Parliament, then we are saying any independent commission need not be audited. And I would like to stress, independence of operation, it's not independence from accountability. We have to understand that. Kenyans' elections are the most expensive elections in the world, meaning that there are leaks within the Electoral Commission. In fact, we should have a forum discussing only the finances of the commission. One of the recommendations I would make is that we adhere to the Kriegler Commission report.
Yeah.
We use the ID card as the voter's card. That already, we do away with the budget of registration of voters. The modalities I will not go into. I would also say yes to staggering of the commission, so that whenever we renew, we do not leave the commission with new people. The other thing is the participatory approach. We have already elaborated on that. Openness and reliable data. The rules should reflect Article 86 of the Constitution. There should be no case where a petitioner or any party seeking information from the commission is made to do an uphill task. They should release information as it is. But because we have too many things that we would like to propose, this requires a separate sitting. But from today's, it's more openness and participatory approach, and also taking of the responsibility by the commission and its staff, but by us also as political parties and key players.
All right. Mr. Namusile, what do you recommend?
I have more questions to ask more than the recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, in the first place, I just want to know where this recommendation of less than 5 commissioners came from. Was it sourced from the experiences at the IEBC by the commissioners, or it is us from the external view demanding that we scale down the number of commissioners? I wish to hear Professor's view on this, because he's the wearer who knows where the shoe pinches. Because there's so much to be done at the IEBC, but the rest of us saying we need 1 commissioner or 2, I think would be material until we get a good suggestion from the IEBC itself. Now, secondly, how will Kenya look like, for instance, under a different electoral system from what we have at the moment? Say the proportional representation electoral system will actually reduce the electoral violence that we normally experience around election times. And thirdly, if 3 GB and 5 are not enough to access all polling stations, what does the Commission recommend? 10 BG? I mean, 10 GB? Is that what we really require, or what exactly should we put in place to access all polling stations to have results transmitted fast and clearly as needed be?
Okay. Professor Guli, I'll let you respond to that really quick as we get recommendations.
I think as a commission, we were 7, and I think those ahead of us were 9. And now for the last nearly 2 years or so, we have been 3. As far as I'm concerned, the operations of the commission has not been hampered by the number of commissioners in post. I know some larger democracies like India have only 3 commissioners, although they have nearly 12 million employees. But as long as you have a good secretariat that can deliver the tasks of the commission, the policy making top organ can be few. I have no problem with that. But anything between 5 and 7 would be sufficient as far as I'm concerned. But we live in a country where politics rules everything, and therefore everyone wants to see themselves in the commission, and therefore this may be an impediment to any reform in terms of numbers. I see proponents of 7, 8, 9, 11, and so on. But
yeah.
In as far as the work itself is concerned, I think any number can do. At the moment, we are 3. As I mentioned, other large democracies have fewer commissioners, and this is backed up by a strong secretariat that is.
All right. As for the network coverage,
properly resourced. I think there are a number of things that I wanted to touch on. First is in terms of network coverage. If for some reason, because of our lack of trust, we seem to have gone deep into use of technology in our elections. And using technology requires certain basic infrastructure. Like, for example, if you are to do transmissions, you must have network coverage across the country. I think this needs to be addressed urgently. If it is not addressed, then the same challenges we had in 2017 and also 2013 will definitely recur in 2022. How are we going to expand network coverage within this country so that almost all the polling stations have network coverage, 3G network coverage for transmission of results? I think in terms of something else which we have not talked about is the issue of campaign financing. I know there is the law is in place. It was supposed to have been enforced from 2017, but Parliament in its own wisdom, I think, deferred it to 2022. But we looked at that law, and it is really problematic, and it's going to create a lot of problems for political parties and for people who will be contesting in 2022. We have made our views on this and brought it to the attention of the relevant committees. We would like stakeholders to relook at that particular act and see how it can be made to be operational. As it is, I think just before 2017 elections, we have had election committees being formed by literally at every level of the seats, from MCA all the way to presidential, people opening accounts left, right, center. How will those accounts be monitored? It is going to be cumbersome. Can we relook at this and make it more operational? Lastly, there is the issue of the 1/3 gender rule. I think Katiba Institute went to court, and we have a ruling that has been given to us as IEBC that we cannot expect political parties who do not nominate at least 1/3 of their candidates to be of either gender. Now, as a commission, we want to implement this going forward. My worry is political parties will be crafty. Where they don't have strongholds, they will nominate women. Where they have strongholds, they will put other people. And that is how they will circumvent or they will beat that law. Can we discuss this, candidly before 2022 and have certain operational guidelines on how to implement this so that we can implement the 1/3 gender rule in political representation?
All right. In the interest of time, because we only have about 15 minutes now, I'd like to hear,
I will stop at that.
Yes, I'd like to hear the recommendations on the reforms needed. And Dr. Jacob Haji is also with us. Dr. Jacob, just enumerate for me maybe 2 of them so that we try and get as many as possible. What are the reforms that you recommend that should be put in place? Dr. Haji, just unmute your microphone.
Do you hear me?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay. My recommendation is that direct to Senator Abshiro and Mheshimiwa Kioni. This is a parliamentarian now we have in this panel. My recommendation is that whatever number of the commission recommend, but I propose personally that the 5 number commission. Then these 5 commissioners serve 7 years so that they can only participate in 1 election. That 5 commissioners. And then having the very strong secretariat, I think we can move ahead than what we used to have now. That is my recommendation.
Okay, Francis, Liwa, very briefly, just 2 of your recommendations as we move forward. Francis, just unmute your microphone.
I'm running low on battery also.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
I think for me, it will to buttress some of the things that have already been said. From my perspective, I think the composition of the commission, we need to take it a bit seriously. And I was quite the response that Professor Gulie gave, because there's actually now lived experience to show that if you have fewer commission, collapse. So I think we need to keep going in that direction. Live by the adage that too many spoil the broth. So probably having fewer cooks at that level is not a bad thing after all. For the doing, in response to Stephen, I think the commission needs more staff. It should have them. And because election work is seasonal, you have an escalation of staff going into an election, and you have a de-escalation coming out of it. That's how you manage the costs. I think the only new thing I can add to this conversation is of cost, because as we talk about governance reforms in this country, sometimes we have glib statements like, it doesn't matter how much money you use as long as you get better democracy. But now in an era when how much money we're spending on these things matters. So I would like for us to continue this conversation, but to remember that we have to weigh what we want to achieve against the fact that those resources are coming with a whole lot. And I think for Professor and your colleagues, having the 6 elections done on different days in whatever format, maybe dividing them into, bunches of 2 or 3, seems like a good thing operationally. But one thing I'm certain about is it would unnecessarily increase costs. Because they are going certain things that could have been done on 1 day, but now have to be done on several days.
Okay.
So maybe looking at the economics of it and increasing the staff you have on election day might give you a better cost profile, for instance. So let's keep talking about this thing, but let's remember that cost is an important consideration.
Okay. Elizabeth Kimkung, your recommendations, very briefly, just 2 of them, because we're running out of time. I'll come to Mairi Zaja and Honorable Jeremiah later on. Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you to the panelists and all the participants. I think as earlier said, I said we have to strengthen our institution. Legal frameworks may not have a lot of problems, but we just need to make them strong enough so that we don't have loopholes. We also have to strengthen the participation of voters, the different political parties and the candidates. And we have to have a strong emphasis on women, youth, and people with disabilities. I think elections should also be efficient, transparent, and peaceful. Last but not least, I still stick to the idea that we have to reduce the number according to the recommendations which have been made in Section 5. We have to reduce the number of the commissioners from 7 to 5. I think Professor Abdi Gulie has just said there are 3 commissioners and they've been working. We have other countries that have a larger population than us, and they have less people at the level when they're handling elections or as commissioners, and the work is still done. The more people you have on board, the more problems you will see. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Ms. Mairi Zaja, thank you so much. Ms. Mairi Zaja, what do you recommend, having been there? Just unmute your microphone first.
Thank you very much. As we discuss this issue of recommendations, I would want to say there's need really to have the IEBC insulated. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that IEBC needs to be insulated from the political class. I feel sometimes there's a lot of intimidation and pressure, and we need to think around that conversation. And, looking at the recommendations in the BBI on the divisive elections, this recommendation of saying we throw out a commission, does that really augur well for the country moving forward? I don't think so. We need to find a way of insulating the IEBC from intimidation by political players. The other thing I wanted to point out in terms of moving forward is this recommendation to have chair of the commission being the CEO. And probably this is to reduce the 2 centers of power in the commission. But I'm wondering why or how we are going to or who is going to direct the commission if the chairperson is the same person who's going to be in charge of implementing the decisions made by the commission. I think those roles, we have to have clear demarcations moving forward. And only that way, then you can say the commission is responsible for policy and oversight, while the secretariat can be left to handle the day-to-day implementation of the activities of the commission.
All right.
The other thing is just strengthening, it keeps on coming, strengthening communication between the different players in the electoral process. Maybe that way we will be able to build the public trust, and that way ensure integrity of the electoral process. Thank you.
Kingwa, I see you just came in earlier on. I thought you had left, but now you're here. Just give us your recommendations really fast, with just 2 sentences on what you recommend to restore the confidence in IEBC before I bring in the politicians who we are looking up to, Senator Bashiro and Jeremiah Kioni, to wind this up.
All right, thank you. This has been a great discussion. And for me, and I think even the last time, that I'm always coming in from a system perspective. And because of the fact that we have not been looking at the system perspective and recognizing where we are, I have no confidence in IEBC reforms moving forward. I actually feel for people like Professor Gulier and his team who are there, because they have to operate in a system in which is not able to deliver what people deliver. In fact, the name Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, for me, in fact, I think for me it's about managing expectations. You people need to call it Fully Compromised Electoral and Boundaries Commission, because with the way the system is, with the way power operates in this country, it's not going to happen. And I think that's something that all of us Kenyans really just need to, and I give the example of it's like a person who's married to an alcoholic or something. That's a bad analogy, but you have to recognize, who am I with? Who is this person that I am living with? And because if every single day, you're always saying, change your ways, and nothing happens, at some time you have to say that, okay, this is a situation, how do I manage myself? So for me, it's the same thing, that as Kenyans, we really have to get to the place where we are tired of keeping on making the same noise and asking for the same thing. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry to be cynical, but there's things happening outside of the mainstream political sector, and perhaps maybe the reason that I can speak so forthrightly is because I'm interested in political innovation, and we have been doing things outside of the political mainstream. So I'm not, much as I'm cynical, I'm not pessimistic about the future of the country. I know that there's other initiatives happening outside, but they're not in the mainstream. But for the mainstream, we have to be honest with ourselves as people, as Kenyans. We have to manage our expectations. So everyone, the IEBC people, I wish you the best and solidarity in this difficult condition.
All right, Senator Bashiro, what do you recommend? I see your daughter is getting a little bit impatient back there. Tell her we're about to wind up. What are your recommendations?
Sorry about that. She's getting okay. Thank you very much, Trevor. And I don't think I'll add anything. I've taken quite a lot of notes, and I think we, as Center for Multi-Party Democracy, are going to process all these things. These are things that are being repeated over and over again, some of which are in the Kriegler report. You saw even during our BBI submission, this is exactly what we said we want to see in terms of the electoral reforms and in terms of strengthening of our electoral body. So for me, really nothing to add, but to thank everybody and to say that let's keep these dialogues going, because then we get clarity for ourselves and we see what it is we can all pick and run with in terms of the actionable items. But we will process this as a center and bring it back to you perhaps for validation as the ways forward.
All right, Honorable Kioni, how possible is all these recommendations that we've just given for you to capture them now that you are a member of parliament?
I think
Honorable
Kioni dropped off, I think.
Yes, I actually can't see him. So I think that's where we're going to leave it for now. Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, Chair CIOC, Honorable Martha Karua, Ms. Lillian Mahirizaja, Professor Abdi Gulie, and Ms. Francis Ayua. I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for having this conversation with us, and all the hundreds who tuned in online, and also the participants, the questions, the answers that came through. Asanteni sana for this discussion. I'm sure we'll have this discussion again some other time, but for now, I want to pass it over to Franklin Mkwanjos, the ED CMD, to take this on for us. Franklin. Franklin, I think you need to unmute your microphone first.
Yeah, thank you very much, Trevor, for the good work of moderating the conversation, and to the panelists for the robust conversation that has, of course, given us a number of recommendations that as the center we will be able to work on. I underscore and acknowledge the critical role of political parties in making sure that there is a credible election. And I want to, I think, assure our membership that we need to stand in the gap of making sure that the political parties are convened at the highest level to enable have dialogue around these issues of electoral and institutional reforms, so that we can improve on the conduct and management of our elections and learn from past experiences and make sure that the 2022 process is better than the previous one. And of course, underscore the fact that pulling off a credible process is not just the responsibility of the commissioners like Professor Abdi Gulie, but a whole range of stakeholders, and the commission requires maximum support and cooperation from all of us stakeholders to ensure that we pull off this. I think it has been a very good conversation. At our secretariat level, we wish to thank you very much, and protocolarly and officially hand it over back to Senator Halake, our chair, to close for us officially. So thank you very much from us. Wish you all the best in the remainder of the weekend, a good weekend.
Thank you, Frank. Again, as I said, for me, it's a big thank you. We are very thankful to have you all on board. As usual, you have given us a lot of very good recommendations. Honorable Martha, Honorable Kioni, and all the team members. Trevor, thank you very much for a very good, I'm trying to get the list of participants because I'm on a gadget that's not providing that. Please forgive me. So Trevor, thank you very much also for always a fantastic moderation. We're very thankful. Honorable Karua, you, as usual, you've said it as it is, and you have lots of experience in this, and we thank you for always honoring our meetings, even these online meetings that can be a bit draining, and I understand. Ms. Zaja, thank you very much. You brought us really very good historical perspective, but also gave us very good, recommendations going forward. And so, and all the others, I cannot really quite see the list of participants. Unfortunately, I saw earlier on Elder Namusule, who, as usual, again, has a lot of insights into what some of these things are. Mr. Musau, all of you, please forgive me because my screen is not showing all of you, but I thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and I know that we go together, we can get this right. And I think we will be focusing on IEBC and a few electoral low-hanging fruits, especially going forward before 2022. So in the next few weeks and months, you will be seeing us focusing on these things. Don't take it as if we have started the elections fever, but it's because we want to ready ourselves for credible, open and transparent elections that give all of us a fair chance at success in our country, a credible and good elections. So I thank you, and I'm very grateful. Professor Guliye, thank you very much. I know it was short notice. I know there was a bit of miscommunication, but thank you for honoring us and for coming and becoming, to be accountable to all of us. That is what leadership is all about, that you are accountable to the citizens. So with those few remarks, I really would like to thank all of you and look forward to engaging with you on these and other areas as we go forward. So I will then officially close this meeting with a word of thanks, and God bless.
All right. God bless. Thank you so much.
Beatrice, come do your work now.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can now
Everyone enjoy the weekend.
Frank should be buying lunch.
I forgot to say Happy Madaraka Day to all of you.
Happy Madaraka Day.
Oh, Happy Madaraka Day.
It's at least a good thing that your tongue didn't slip to say Merry Christmas.
It feels like we've been on Christmas holiday all this time.
We just enjoyed Ramadan.
Minus the many relatives.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye.